On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about Screams and Whispers by Anacrusis. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Medalist podcast. I'm Kayle.
I'm OJ Smoothie.
People will not get that.
Okay.
On this episode, we're two professional broadcasters, and we like metal and we like to talk about it. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Screams and Whispers, an album by Anacrusis. Came out in 1993. Anacrusis is an American progressive thrash metal band. And yeah, we'll talk more about them a bit later on.
All right.
First, I don't know how long this episode is going to be.
Right.
I'm going to try for once in our lives. I'm going to try and make this concise and professional sounding.
Sure.
Mostly because I just want to get done with it faster so I can go back to playing Baldur's Gate 3.
Right. Which I read reviews about. And everybody's like, damn.
Yeah,
it's a great game.
And I'm happy that seems to be the opinion. I was going to play it no matter what.
Oh, of course.
I mean, I bought it 2 years ago already.
Yeah, you've already put, 90 hours into it?
Into early access.
Yeah.
Which I was actually pretty surprised at the number of differences so far in the game, just even on like an aesthetic level. They changed some of the art for the characters and like character portraits, and like the whole UI seems like it's been cleaned up. It looks a bit cleaner. There's a number of things that they changed between early access and the full release of the game. It looks really good so far. I mean, there's only been one big change so far as far as like the content that I've already gone through a number of times. And it was basically just changing the map for changing the map for the first combat encounter and then skipping a middle section where there was never really any combat and there was always a kind of janky cinematic that I think they maybe just kind of gave up on trying to make it work and trying to make it look good. And so they're like, well, if it doesn't look good, then we're just going to cut it and skip past that whole area. It was, and like in theory, it was going to be a pretty cool thing because you emerge onto the deck of this Nautiloid, which is this mind flayer ship.
Neat.
So it's this big, it looks like, do you know what what are they called? They're called Nautiluses. They're like shelled squid.
Right.
So it's like this big shelled squid that is also a ship.
Nice. That
mind flayers zip around the planes on. And
trying to think what else uses the Nautilus as a ship.
That would be, is it, how many leagues under the sea? Is it
10,000?
10,000?
Yeah.
10,000. I was going to say 20,000, but that was the sequel.
Yeah.
They did another 10,000. Or they went for twice as long.
Right.
I don't know. But I believe that ship is called the Nautilus.
Right.
Also
it's a piece of exercise equipment.
Sure.
Okay.
So you emerge onto the deck of this Nautilus, which is being attacked by Githyanki, who are these like people that live in the outer planes that have a long-standing hatred of the mind flayers, and some of them ride around on red dragons. And so this ship is being attacked by a number of Githyanki riding red dragons. And this one dragon shows up and basically like tears the front off of the entire ship. And they just kind of cut that out, I think, because it was, like I said, it was always kind of a janky animation. But yeah, I'm really excited to play the rest of the game. I'm very confident that it's going to be excellent. I never played all the way through the previous game from this developer, which everyone says, at least before Baldur's Gate 3 came out, maybe it will shape up to be the new version of this. But before that everyone said that Divinity Original Sin 2 was like the best turn-based RPG ever made, more or less. Like it's, you know, it has reached the status of like, you know, like old school isometric turn-based RPGs like the original Fallout or the trying to think of the game that Fallout was like inspired by. That's continued on Wasteland.
Oh, sure.
And they're actually, at some point I need to play Wasteland 3 because that came out, I think, a while ago at this point, but it's still fairly new. But I've heard Wasteland 3 is also excellent because I like anything that combines RPG elements with like squad turn-based combat, which is, I mean, that's just what Baldur's Gate 3 is all about. And like Wasteland would be that, but you know, with guns in a post-apocalypse. Now,
how close to being like 5e is Baldur's Gate 3?
Pretty close. There are a number of changes from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to make things work a little bit better in a digital format. So, for example, like if you're playing tabletop, right, and you're your character in our Sunday game is a battle master, which is that class is in, or that subclass is in Baldur's Gate 3. But the way that the battle master's main mechanic, which is the maneuver using superiority dice, the way that mechanic works is you roll to attack, and then once you hit, you choose to spend a superiority die to add an extra effect. To keep combat flowing, instead of rolling to hit, it's a success. Now select an extra thing you want to do. You select the thing you want to do before you roll to hit.
Nice.
And if you miss, you don't expend the resource.
Nice.
Dude,
that'd be cool if we did it in...
I mean, it happens every once in a while when before you roll to hit, you're like, I want to do a trip attack. Yeah. I'm like, well, let's see if you hit first.
Right. I'm just declaring.
Yeah, I'm declaring my intention for the future, which is honestly nice for me because it means that I should get ready to roll, a strength saving throw.
Right.
But to make things flow a little bit better, they have you select all of the things that you want to do with the attack before you actually roll it. And then if the attack doesn't work, if applicable, you get the resource back. It's still the same for, like spell casting or whatever, where, that's the way it's always works. Like you roll to hit, and if you miss, you still use that spell slot.
Yeah.
Because it's all rolled together in one package that way. Divine Smite for Paladin is like the superiority die thing. Something else that they changed is the way you can, because like reactions would be weird to do. The way that they have that set up is if you have a feature or a spell or whatever that is a reaction, there is a tab that you can go to on your character sheet where you can basically toggle different reactions on and off. So if the game meets a certain like activation criteria, your character will automatically trigger that reaction.
Nice.
But you don't get a say in that. So if you leave that toggled on and you roll a nat 20 on your attack roll and you have a spell slot as a paladin, you are going to use a Divine Smite even if you didn't necessarily want to. You have to go and toggle that off if you don't want that anymore. So it becomes like a little bit of a, how conservatively do you want to play it?
How do you have it?
I think I have it on because I like seeing big damage numbers. But it's like, when you're, because also in like early games, like early on in the campaign, you're not generally fighting things that have super big health pools. So you might nat 20 a goblin that had 7 health and you use a spell slot and like overkill it by about 40. So that can definitely feel like a waste, especially because paladins don't have a ton of spell slots to begin with.
Right.
But there are a couple of other changes. You need to have food in order to get the most out of a long rest.
Gotcha.
You have to have a certain number of supplies and then when you take a long rest, you will get all your HP back. You will get all your spell slots back. If you don't have enough supplies, you won't get all your HP or your spell slots back. You can take 2 short rests per day, which is just a button you hit, and then without having to go back to your camp, you just get HP and applicable stuff back. If you're a warlock, you get your spell slots back, and so on.
Is it a campfire symbol? No?
Yes, it is.
It is?
It is a campfire symbol.
Yeah.
And then another thing that they changed is there are a number of like minor actions that they made, like smaller things that in tabletop take a full action. They made them into a bonus action in the game to make things a little bit more dynamic, like drinking a potion is a bonus action. Shoving someone is a bonus action, so on and so forth. They like did that to kind of speed up combat a little bit, make it feel a little bit more dynamic for a digital setting, so things don't feel like a slog.
Right.
So like if someone's gotten into melee with your ranged character, you can use a bonus action to try and shove them away from you.
Right.
And then you can run without taking an opportunity attack. They used to have it where you could jump to disengage as a bonus action, but I think it was like that really kind of fucks with Rogue's whole deal, doesn't it? Because that's a big feature of the whole Rogue class is you can do things like disengage as a bonus action. So I think you can't do that anymore. But you can still like shove and potentially get away. But if you're not playing a character with a high strength modifier, the chances that shove is going to work are much slimmer.
Sure.
It does make things dangerous because the enemies can do that too. So if you're fighting anywhere where there's a lot of heights, that can get a little dangerous because the enemy AI can be pretty smart sometimes, and they're like, that's a big cliff. You're going over it. You can obviously do that to them too. But I've in early access, I had a couple of moments like that where it's like, oh, fuck, my character just fell 50 feet. And because it's all, digitally 3D modeled, Larian Studios has done a great job with like verticality in their maps.
Nice.
And adding in a lot of the vertical element, which is really hard to do on tabletop. And even with digital tabletops like Roll20, it's really hard to simulate verticality. It just kind of becomes a pain in the ass. I try my best to add some level of verticality to encounters where it seems applicable. And, we've got some characters that can fly. So I have little platforms that we can put characters up on that changes things around a little bit. But
the characters fall off and they break their swords and
or their spear tips or what have you. Yeah, it's
because we have minis.
I really need like a supply of like sticky tack. That we can just put on the base of people's minis and to stick them onto the risers. On Dimension 20, they have this a really good thing, a really cool thing where they have like a extendable radio antenna, or I don't know if it's radio antenna or if it's maybe like one of those extendable like pointer stick. Yeah. I don't know if it could honestly be either or, like because they look basically exactly the same unless you're looking at them up close. But like you could just go to Radio Shack or whatever the fuck it is now, and you can buy one of those. But like they have those. And screwed to a slightly heavier base, so you can just like extend it however far up you want to go, and then attach characters to it with sticky tack.
Gotcha.
Which if I was a little bit craftier, maybe I'd figure out how to do something like that. But while we were in Las Vegas, the game that we ran, which was our normal characters, the DM actually did something that I thought was really cool, where he got a whole bunch of like, I don't know exactly what it would be called. I guess like crafting foam,
sure,
or something, like just big sheets of foam. And he cut it up and constructed like a map, which was this like underground chamber with like multiple height tiers and whatnot. And he constructed this 3D map fairly quickly. And I thought that was really cool. I do have a ton of like big cardboard sheets that I've kept just in case I need, some cardboard. Maybe I need to put something down or like spray paint something really quick. Right?
You want to break dance? Yeah.
Maybe I want to break dance. And for a while I've been thinking like maybe I could like figure out some way to build some D&D shit with this. Like get a hot glue gun and put something and cut this up and put it together. And that made me think like, man, that would be really cool, but I'm also just so fucking lazy when it comes like it's an element where it's like, yeah, that would be really cool. But also I can get 90% of that by just drawing it on the grid.
Right.
And a person's only got so much time in the week. Yesterday, before Baldur's Gate 3 came out, I wanted to rush as hard as I could to finish Bloodborne.
Sure. Did you?
Made no progress.
Oh no.
I put a couple of tries into Lady Maria.
Yeah.
Realized I was down to my last 20 blood vials because in that game they make you farm your healing items, which I hate. So I had to stop for an hour and go farm blood echoes to buy blood vials. And then I spent the next 2.5 hours just repeatedly smashing my head against the wall. The wall being a 7-foot tall blonde woman.
Yeah, and not in the way you'd like to.
Look, when I say I want to spend my evenings getting demolished by a big imposing blonde, that's not what I meant.
Right.
But yeah, I could get her down to her third phase really reliably, but she would get into that third phase and just immediately delete me.
Oof.
I got her down to one last flurry.
Yeah.
Because she's fairly easy to stun lock. Like if you've got like a weapon with high enough stats behind it, you can basically stun lock her and keep hitting her until you run out of stamina.
Gotcha.
And I got her down to like, if I had gotten one last flurry on her, I would have beaten her. And I spent about another hour after that trying.
And you never made it past.
I never got back to that point. And so at about like 8:45 last night, I was like, you know what? I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it tonight. I'd rather I want to play a little bit of Deep Rock and
Chopra?
Yeah, Deep Rock. Deep Rock Chopra?
Right.
Okay, wait. Who's that a reference to?
Deepak Chopra.
I don't know who Deepak.
He's like a political analyst, I think.
Okay. I don't know why. What popped into my head was I can't remember his name anymore. He's the little person. Is he Indian or Pakistani?
Oh, I don't know. He's in all the Tim Burton movies.
Yeah, and he was Elijah Wood's height double.
Right.
In the Lord of the Rings. I can't remember his name either. But that's what popped in. That's because his name. I think his name is Deep something.
No, he's an alternative medicine dude. Is the Deepak Chopra?
Deepak Chopra.
I don't know who I was thinking of.
But anyway, I just beat my head against the wall for a couple hours last night, and like the thing that I will give the developers when it comes to Lady Maria is she is. Like they, since Bloodborne, they have in most of their games included a boss that is heavily inspired by Lady Maria.
Yeah.
In Dark Souls 3, it was Sister Frida, and in Elden Ring, it's Melania.
Right.
Tall, imposing women who fight with supernatural grace. They're very soft-spoken, but they will murder your shit over and over again. Unlike Melania, at no point was I going, that was fucking bullshit. That made no sense. I shouldn't have died there. It's like, no. Like, she has her attacks are fairly well telegraphed. They're fast, but you can see the telegraph. Like she's fair, just really fucking hard. And her fight is one of those that gets harder and harder the longer it goes.
Yeah.
Like her first phase, she moves fast, but her attacks are fairly easy to dodge. Her attacks also have limited range. Her second phase greatly increases the range of all of her attacks, but the dodge windows are still about the same. Then in the third phase, the range stays the same, but now the dodge window is much shorter, and you have to like time it much better. You have to like wait until as soon as possible before the attack goes off, because there is a fire element that is introduced after the swing itself. Like she swings and then a millisecond later, the path of her swing explodes in fire. So if you're not still in your iframes when that fire explosion happens, you'll get hit by it. And it gets continuously harder and harder, but I did not get nearly as frustrated or angry with that fight as I did with Sister Freda in Dark Souls 3, which, Jesus fucking Christ. I despise that boss with all of my heart. I hate that boss so much.
One of my favorite things in those games is when you fight a boss over and over and over and you finally kill them, but they kill you at the same time.
Oh, God.
That's so not frustrating at all.
It's the worst fucking thing in the world.
Right.
It's the worst thing in the world.
Because you watch them die and then you respawn only to have to fight them again.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. But yeah, I tried over and over and over again, and I didn't get it. Which I was just like, you know what? I'll come back to this whenever I come back to Bloodborne, after however long I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 for.
So in 2024.
Yeah, in a couple of years. Because the thing about Baldur's Gate 3 that really excites me, that I talked to you about earlier today, is it basically allows me to do something that I've wanted to do ever since I started playing Dungeons and Dragons years ago, which is now I get to play it whenever I want.
Right.
And I don't need to, coordinate schedules with a bunch of people. I can just boot up my computer and there we go. I can play basically Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
And a lot of the classes are in there. A lot of the subclasses are in there. And I can basically play the same game that I'm so in love with. Whenever I want, and that makes me very happy. I really like, for what I didn't grow up playing like turn-based games,
right?
Like I had a PlayStation growing up. I never played a single Final Fantasy game.
Really?
I never played any Final Fantasy games. I don't think I played, despite having a PlayStation, which is a Japanese console. I don't think I had like any Japanese games. Really? Growing up, it was weird. That just wasn't what I played. It wasn't what any of my friends were playing. Like I didn't have anybody, that I was friends with that was like, hey, like there's this game Final Fantasy, you should play it. And I also didn't really actually learn how to actually play video games until I was probably like 13. Wow. I would just play video games and just be like, da, 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 and just do, that's being a
when
little.
You were 13?
Yeah, no, but for example, I had, when I was probably too young, 11, I had Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I never bothered with the story in that game.
Really?
I just fucked around with cheat codes the entire time.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, for the age that I was, stop thwapping me with your tail. Cat's being annoying.
Yeah. He wasn't talking to me.
For the age that I was, it was probably a good thing that I didn't play the story of San Andreas.
Wildly inappropriate. Yeah.
Wildly inappropriate. Yeah. So I probably actually avoided most of the age inappropriate stuff by never playing the story. I didn't really really get into playing and figure out like how to mechanically play video games from that angle until I was, like 12, 13 years old.
Sure.
An event like it basically kind of took until like I also was never really big into like mostly story based games. Like the first like single player games that I really got into was probably like I think like Red Dead Redemption.
Wow.
Was probably the first like really long campaign story based game that I played. And then after that, like I played Grand Theft Auto 4. And I started getting more and more into like single player games. And then
See, I started out that way.
with single player games.
Yeah, like Centipede and Pac-Man,
Yeah.
Space Invaders,
Classic. Yes.
Pong, that was more of a 2-player game.
But you could play Pong single player.
Yeah, you could.
I think it was like Skyrim that really opened my eyes because I had never played like an RPG before that. And Skyrim is like baby's first role playing game.
Right. I still want to play it at least one more time.
That's what they always say. Just one more Skyrim playthrough.
One more Skyrim playthrough and then no more. It's fine.
And you're totally going to play it all the way through. You're totally going to play. You're totally going to do. Maybe we play Skyrim differently because whenever I start a new Skyrim playthrough, it never gets finished.
Really?
I mean, I've finished Skyrim multiple times,
But you
it,
never
like,
completed Skyrim.
well, not completed. God, what do I have? 45 years to play?
All my playthroughs are completionist.
Okay, but like getting to level 80 fighting the Ebony Warrior completionist.
Sure, of course.
I just don't have the patience for that. Leveling takes way too fucking long.
You know what? The part of it that always pisses me off because I like to be a completionist is that you fail a mission early on, whether you want to or not, because you either have to join the Stormcloaks or you have to join the Imperials.
Yeah.
You can't do both.
And there's not a neutral
Right.
playthrough either, which as someone whose favorite RPG is Fallout New Vegas,
Sure.
it bothers me that there's not a neutral option for this political thing because there's 2 neutral options in Fallout New Vegas, which
Nice.
I at this point prefer. Like my first playthrough, I was like New California Republic because they're they're probably good, and then I was like they're not very good, but I'm definitely not playing Caesar's Legion because they are fucking slavers,
Sure.
who view women as property. So I'm not going to do that. And also their storyline is very short because Obsidian ran out of time and money because Bethesda gave them a year to make a whole game.
Wow.
But yeah, it's like it bugs me that you have to choose Stormcloaks or Imperials. I have no problem choosing Imperials over. In my mind, the Imperials are kind of the more moral choice.
Yes, because the first playthrough, I'm like, I'm a rebel. I'm going to join the Stormcloaks.
And then it's like, oh, these guys are kind of racist, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're kind of racist. They're like, it's veiled.
Right.
It's veiled. But they're the guys who are always yelling, Skyrim is for the Nords.
Belongs to the Nords, yeah. And they're doing it right in front of me. Look, you see I'm a Khajiit, right? I mean,
yeah, I am a literal cat person. So yeah, that never...
Yeah.
I think I did a couple Stormcloak playthroughs before I started thinking about it a little bit more critically. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to go with the Empire here.
Right. The
Empire.
Right.
Well, and like people always bring up is like, oh, the Empire, it's for religious reasons. And it's like, yeah, but when you talk to the people who like there are several Imperial characters who privately worship Talos anyway.
Right.
And when you talk to General Tullius, he's like, yeah, this has been a bit of a distraction for the war preparation we're doing to fight the people who are outlawing the god they want to worship in the first place. Like, we're readying ourselves for round 2 with the Aldmeri Dominion, and this is getting in the way.
Right.
So if you want your religious freedom back, stop fighting us and help us get it back for you.
From the Altmeri.
But yeah, it's also
the High Elves.
Also the Imperial Legion armor is so cool.
It is.
Like I'm such a sucker for Lorica Segmentata, which is the Roman Legion like plate armor.
Right.
I'm such a sucker for that armor. It's so cool looking. And that's basically what the Imperial Legion has, even though it kind of makes no sense for them to have that style of armor when there are characters walking around with like much more modern looking plate armor.
Yeah.
Like it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but it looks really cool. So I give it a pass. But yeah, that's us talking about video games for a very long time. We should talk about Anacrusis.
Sure.
So I don't know much of anything about Anacrusis. I did just a teeny tiny amount of reading about them, and I'm doing a little bit more right now.
Sure.
Learning that they are kind of, I guess, sort of, how do I put this? Kind of like underground legends as far as the amount of influence they have had over the progressive metal scene.
Right.
And of course, specifically progressive thrash metal, but just progressive metal in general. They were a pretty big and important band in that scene for the time that they were around. That's about the limit to what I know about them. What do you know about them?
I got to tell you, I know just about as much. I mean, because the information just isn't really available.
Yeah.
And when I got it, I think this was the album. I think I don't remember the other album I had, but this is the one that I really loved the most. And this is their final album.
Yeah.
They were done after this.
So I'm looking at their Wikipedia page now. So they had their first album, which is called Suffering Hour.
Yes.
That they made on a $1,200 budget in just under a week.
Right.
And then they made an album called Reason, which they toured. Their drummer left to join the Navy after that.
Yeah. They
signed to Metal Blade. And then in 1991 was Manic Impressions, which was their first like real studio album.
Right.
And that was recorded in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, the home of Gary Gygax. We're all tying it back together to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But then they toured in support of Overkill. And also they had some opening dates for Megadeth. So like
they were a big deal.
That's pretty big for like, we just did our first real studio album. And here we are in 1991.
Right.
Opening for Megadeth. That's pretty huge.
But your Countdown to Extinction didn't come out until 92 or 90. Was it 92?
I don't know. I'm not terribly familiar with dates for Megadeth's discography. But they then released this album, Screams and Whispers, in 1993, and they broke up after the album was released. They've had sort of sporadic one-off shows and reunions since then, but have, to my understanding, never made any more, new released music.
Right.
So, a legacy left behind of a number of demos and sort of cheaper studio albums that aren't really available anywhere, and then 2 proper studio albums.
Right.
And it's like, this is, I feel like you've brought a lot of bands like this lately where like they were very important for a couple of years and then they disappeared.
There's been a lot of those. There are bands that you and I will never know about.
Yeah.
That were a big deal.
That were, massively important in some scene for a couple of years and then they disappeared and no one remembers their name.
Right.
And it's kind of like, and there are a number of bands that, were around for a couple of years, disappeared, and then people do remember their names that became huge. Outside of metal, think of fucking CCR.
Yeah.
How many years was Creedence Clearwater Revival around for?
Like 2.
Yeah, they were around for like 2 years.
And they recorded like 16 albums.
That's true. They did make a lot of music.
Yeah.
But like CCR was around for a couple of years. Everybody remembers them.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
But like, so it's sometimes you can be such a legend that you can release a couple of things.
Right.
Or a massive amount of things, but in a short period of time.
And like with CCR, John Fogerty left the band and then started recording his own shit. And they're like, hey, we only have this catalog to go on. They tried to make their own stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't as good. And then he recorded stuff. And they sued him. Did you know that?
Really?
They sued him for sounding too much like himself.
Oh, wow. Because it became obvious to everyone that John Fogerty was the driving force behind the band.
Right. He was the voice. He was the songwriter. He was.
Yeah. How dare you sound like the music that you wrote?
Well, it was Old Man Down the Road sounded just like Run Through the Jungle.
Oh.
But he wrote both of those songs.
Yeah.
So
it's like it's just in my style.
Right.
That's God. I think I did hear a little something about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was also, by the way, because we're doing a new thing at work where we do like themed song sets at 4:00. And I was looking for like Southern rock as well, because we had said Allman Brothers for today.
Yeah.
And for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I was looking through, I was like listening to some Allman Brothers stuff. And like with all the other ones we had chosen, I was like, this is way too twangy to fit it. Like it will stand out like a sore thumb, even though it is very Southern. So instead, I was looking for other bands. I ended up with Georgia Satellites.
Okay, sure.
But
they're from Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking for other bands. I was like, is CCR a Southern rock band?
They're not. They're from San Francisco.
But boy, do they sound like a Southern rock. Like they're not literally from the South, but every single part of their musicality can be considered Southern rock. But
They sound like they might have been born on a bayou.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like every single one of their songs sounds like it came straight from below the Mason-Dixon line. But I didn't want someone to be like, they're not a fucking Southern rock band. They're from San Francisco. Yeah. No one would have done that, but still. I decided to stick with bands that were from the South.
We actually have a Collective Soul song. You could have chose that.
That again would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
It would have. I mean, they're from Atlanta. But
But yeah. Let's get back to this Anacrusis lady.
Hi, I'm Anacrusis.
What a strange last name she has. So what's your history with this band?
Mainly this. I got this album first. I mean, this is my discovery of them. Sadly, I mean, hey, this is a great album. I'm going to follow this band.
Yeah. I hate that.
Yeah.
When I feel like it's happened to me so many times.
Yeah.
And it happened for me. The realization of what I've done happens much faster. Where like I will by chance hear a piece of music or come across something and be like, that's amazing. I want to hear more from this band. And they broke up.
Yeah.
They've been, or like they haven't made any music in 10 years.
Well, this album's over 10 years old. And their singer's dead.
That's happened to me so many times. Yeah. There's like a mathcore band whose name I can no longer remember. I can't remember the name of that band, but they were very like Dillinger Escape Plan-esque.
Sure.
But I like had come across some of their music like, wow, that's fucking crazy. I want to listen to more of it. And they haven't made any music in like a decade. Cool. But I'm trying to remember how long I was into Dillinger Escape Plan before they broke up or went on more or less permanent hiatus. I think I was only into them for like a year before they're like, yeah, we're calling it quits after this album. I was like, God damn it. I think I had an opportunity to go to their last show. Like I probably could have made it out to their last show that they did in Minneapolis. And I really regret not doing it. Just because no one does live shows like Dillinger did.
Really?
Shit got dangerous at those shows. Like Greg Puciato running across people's heads climbing up the at outdoor festivals. You know how they always have those scaffoldings on the sides of the stage that look really climbable. He would do that. He would climb like 25 feet up and jump. I saw something that they played in like a big amphitheater of some kind, and there was like stairs going up to like a railing and whatnot. Ben Wyman, guitarist, playing a wireless guitar, went and stood balanced on the railing while playing. What the fuck? Like the amount of bones that almost every member of that band broke because of the crazy shit they would do during their live shows.
Yeah.
But you listen to that music and you're like, how could it be anything else? How could their live shows be any other way?
The first time I ever saw somebody do that, it was I got a VHS of the band, the Stormtroopers of Death, playing live at Budokan, and the show opens up with Billy Milano on top of the stacks on the side of this. So I don't know if you've ever seen Billy Milano.
Is he a large gentleman?
He's a large gentleman, and he was standing up there smoking a cigar. And he pitches the lit cigar into the crowd and then stage dives.
Oh my God.
It was like
fucking
like a collapse, yeah.
Oh wow.
From a circle out.
That's intense.
Yeah, that was a great show.
I feel like being landed on by Greg Puciato is, on one hand, he's not a very tall person.
Yeah.
I think he's like only like 5. I think he's only like 5'5" or something like that. He's fairly short, but he is also, and always has been, jacked as fuck. So he's very dense.
Sure.
Like at least I think he's pretty short. Maybe I'm getting him confused with someone else, but I think he's not particularly tall, but he is very, very built.
The guy from Whitechapel.
Phil Bozeman is also fairly short, but
right.
I from what I remember, Greg Puciato is not very tall. But Anacrusis. Does this album slap?
Yeah.
Is that how that's supposed to be said? Anacrusis?
And it's Anacrusis.
Okay.
I was just mispronouncing it.
Oh, okay. You're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Exactly.
But by the way, the word anacrusis is like an unstressed syllable in a word, or an unstressed like beat in music.
Right. Which is probably more
what they were, but it's a double meaning. But this album I would say definitely slaps. I did find myself early on having a little bit of trouble with the mix of this album, or at least the version that's on Spotify.
Sure.
The mix felt a little off. The production felt a little off, to the point where it made things sound messier than they ought to have.
There is a remaster.
A remaster. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I listened to the original version. It did have a remix of one of the songs as a bonus track, but I maybe should have sought out the remaster of this.
One thing I love about this is when I heard this back in 1993, I'm like, this is a bit outdated. Because at the time, they used the type of symbols, samples, and synthesizers at the time. I was like, wow, this is kind of... But now I listen to it and I'm like, it's almost fresh again. I did notice that too, of like some of the synth that they had in there. I was like, that feels, for 1993, that feels a little like that came out the same year as Images and Words, right?
Which that's not Jordan Rudess, but I can't remember the keyboardist they had at the time, but he's still an amazing keyboardist.
He died. No, he didn't. He didn't die. He's fine.
Still an amazing keyboardist with a massive amount of like different samples and whatnot that he was pulling from for all their different songs. And then we've some kind of outdated sounding synth, but I mean, you don't have all the money in the world when you're a progressive thrash metal band.
Right, that's a hard sell.
And you're going to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I don't know if that's where they recorded this album, but that's not where I think of when I think of like going to recording studios. But that's also like music recording studios outside of like really big labels that are doing, you know, massive pop music.
Right.
Of course, that's going to be centralized in either LA
or New York,
or if it's country music in Nashville.
Right.
Outside of that, for recording like rock or metal, it's shocking to me how many quality studios there are all over the country.
Right.
Like there are pretty damn good recording studios for those kinds of music all over the place.
I recorded a pretty darn good studio in Bismarck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like as long as you've got like decent gear and someone who knows an engineer who knows what they're doing with it, and you've got enough money to pay them for their time to actually like mix and master properly, you can get something that sounds pretty goddamn good.
Sure.
Almost anywhere in the country. And that I've always found that to be pretty interesting when when I'm looking at an album like this was recorded in fucking a town I've never heard of in Colorado. And it's one of those things where like if you are become a known name and you have a good studio, like a good building, bands will travel to record with you. Sure. Because unlike, you know, a number of other like media formats, traveling is the thing that bands do. Right. Like, of course, bands are willing to travel. They're already going on tour all the time.
Our shit's already in our van.
Like, all of our stuff is portable. It's not a problem for us to drive halfway across the country to go and record at your studio.
To the death metal mega hub recording megalopolis of Yankton.
It's like, do you have an apartment above your studio?
Yeah.
Cool. Can we crash there?
Right. Is there a garage?
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's like a thing that a lot of recording studios have. They'll have like an apartment above them. That's what God City in Salem, that's Kurt Ballou's studio. He has an apartment above the studio that bands can stay in.
Were you there when JD was talking about being on tour with his band, and he was at the band house for this bar in the middle of nowhere, and it was really just where the guy kept his munitions?
Oh wow!
So he was in this. There were beds, and then there were rifles and submachine guns and grenades. And he said he nicked a switchblade from there.
It's something that wouldn't be missed.
Right, yeah.
Hopefully that guy keeps a count of his grenades and would notice if one was gone.
I got somewhere between 10 and 500 grenades.
I don't keep track. I don't keep a close track of how many grenades I have. Right. I didn't look terribly hard for like score for this album. Maybe it was out there. I kind of assume this is one of those things that's old enough and under the radar enough to where there's probably not a lot of material available.
There won't be.
What's your favorite song on the album?
You know, the song that has stuck in my head for the last 30 years, every now and then, is the opening track, is Sound the Alarm.
Sound the Alarm, okay.
Yeah.
I found myself really digging My Soul's Affliction.
Oh yeah, that's great too.
The main riff and the chord progression. I really dug. It felt really like epic in a way. I also really liked I don't know if it's. I think it's just a remix in the sense of like we changed the mix,
right?
But less of a remix in like the hip hop sense
of release.
Of release.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's appreciably all that different from the previous version of Release, but I also really like Release.
Yeah. Tools of Separation is also fucking fantastic.
Tools of Separation.
Yeah.
But I'd say My Soul's Affliction is probably my favorite. God, who's another thing that was like a little grating to me at first that I slowly got more and more into. I didn't much care for the vocalists singing at first.
Right.
It was a bit of an acquired taste. I picked up on it fairly quickly. And eventually what it started to remind me of is Do you remember Slice the Cake?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
His singing reminded me a bit of the clean singing of from Gareth in Slice the Cake. There's a bit of like a
Gareth Bryn, right?
No, I don't remember his last name, but it reminded me like there's a bit of a kind of I would say sort of like tortured sounding quality to it. Eventually I started picking up on that. I was like, okay, like it's that reference point of your brain of like I'm not sure if I like this, but if I compare it to, if I can find a comparison to something I do like, I start to like it.
Right.
Do you ever have that? There's like that. You know what I'm talking about?
And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes I kind of like this, and then I realize it sounds like something else that it's like
that you don't like.
Yeah, I don't like.
And then suddenly you don't like it anymore.
Right.
Yeah, that I think that's happened to me before as well. So what metal are you bestowing upon this album, like Maz Kanata to Chewbacca?
Man, I'm kind of conflicted. I mean, I kind of have to say silver on this one.
Yeah. I would agree. I'd give it a silver.
Yeah, I enjoy this album a lot, but I don't know if it could rise above silver for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't give this a gold personally, but I enjoyed this album. I liked it. I did only listen to it once because I wanted to spend as much time playing Baldur's Gate when I got home as possible. Right. So I listened to half of it while I was doing logs at work, and then I listened to half of it after I got back home.
He was lamenting earlier, by the way. He said, "Why did this have to be a full-hour album, OJ?
Why did it have to be so long?" But yeah. So a silver for Screams and Whispers. Next week, as is usual, I don't know what I want to talk about yet, but
I've got my next four lined up.
I know what I want to talk about for the first week in September that I do.
Okay. That's non-metal, right?
Yeah, I've got some non-metal choices that I want to talk about.
I know what that is for me as well.
Speaking of non-metal choices, I've kept listening to Deaf Heaven over and over again.
Yeah.
I can't stop listening to that album.
It's really good.
I can't believe I did not like that when it came out. Like it's crazy to me. So I guess I'm making up for lost time. But I will figure out something metally to talk about next week.
A medley.
A medley. Yes, a medley of metal songs. But until then, why don't you go ahead and follow us on Facebook and X? Ugh. Ugh. You know what? Don't follow us on X. Fuck that platform. Like, what are you supposed to say? Like, oh, I'm gonna X.
I'm gonna X.
People are like, I'm gonna tweet. I'm gonna write a tweet. Sense. They say like, oh, I'm gonna X. No, you're not. You can't say that. That's not a verb.
I love the light on the top of the building, by the way. That's just so obnoxious. This is the apartment building there. You think this bright light shine right in their fucking window.
God, it's so fucking it has been entertaining to see that company slowly disintegrate under Musk's leadership. I feel like if anyone was still holding on to the shred of an idea that he is an intelligent man, or that he has like good business sense, it's like he's made it his mission to prove them wrong. He'd be like, no, I am an idiot and an asshole. Like there was a time where like all I knew about him is that he owned Tesla and he owned SpaceX. And he was
a founder of
PayPal?
eBay. No, not eBay. Yeah, PayPal. Yeah, PayPal. That's where I used to use.
But it's like
PayPal and eBay.
Like, you know, that like all I knew about him was that, and like I thought he was a pretty cool dude because that's before he started talking all the time. For a while, I thought he was pretty cool. Like, hey, he's into space exploration and he's a nerd and he likes these things. He's a rich guy who's doing cool stuff with his money. He's making electric cars and going to space. Isn't that neat? Oh, he's an asshole and an idiot and takes credit for all these amazing things that he has no actual involvement in,
right?
Other than being the bank for it. it's anyway. Don't follow us on X. Delete your account.
Are we on what's the meta one?
Facebook?
No.
Threads?
Threads, that's what it is.
No, we're not on Threads.
All right.
I have no intention of touching that platform.
No,
at all.
no. I already have too many meta platforms on my phone.
So, I guess follow us on Facebook if you want.
Or Snapchat.
I don't fucking care. Subscribe. Here's what you can do. Subscribe to our feed on what you're using to listen to us right now.
Yeah, which I assume you already have.
If you haven't done that, please do so. And that is probably the best way to get new episodes when they come out.
Exactly.
How about that? So,
yay.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bronze Medalist Podcast. I'm Kayle.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations.